Okay, everybody, we are now live. Can everybody see my screen?
I only see the image, golden image.
Yes, hallelujah. Okay, that's so good. If you can see that, we'll be good to go with the rest of the presentation. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is able to see Nebuchadnezzar's golden image. And if everybody can see that, we should be good to go. Okay, Mr. McCarthy, we're going to go ahead and get this evening's class started. The title of tonight's show is called Nebuchadnezzar's Golden Image, and I want to thank everybody for the participation here tonight. And we're going to be looking at the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and Daniel, the 3rd chapter, all right? These 2 chapters I find very interesting. Actually, we've been having some conversation regarding the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter and the 3rd chapter for the last couple of days. And I just want to give my perspective on what I see that is going on with this image, and your participation would be gladly appreciated. So don't be afraid, chime in, and we're going to have a good night. But before we get started, let's go ahead and do the Father's Prayer. I'm going to do it in Hebrew, then I'm going to do it in English, and then we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling. Abinu Shabbat Shamayim, Yich Kudat Shemka, O Yich Barak Melkutka, Retsunka Yahiye Ishui, Ba Shamayim, Uba Aretz, Uts Atzain Lakmenu Tamadit, Umakulanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Mukalim, U'a Tabi Anu La Yede Nasayon, U Sham Manu Ra Makar Ra Amen. So, Mr. Ricard, we're going to do it now in English. Our Father which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread, forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Father, we pray that you lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, YAHUSHA HAMASHIAH. We say hallelujah. Okay, so once again, Mr. McCarthy, I want to thank everybody for chiming in tonight. It is so much appreciated. And we're going to see what we are able to do with tonight's class. All right. So Nebuchadnezzar's golden image. Before we get started, let me provide some of my sources to help my audience understand my perspective. Now, I have a list of sources that I went through to actually support my argument here tonight. So far on page 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 PDFs that can be actually pulled up and downloaded if a person was interested. What I'm finding most interested is there's a guy by the name of George Burton. His publication came about in 1888, and he has a doctorate and a master's in grammar of the languages of the cuneiform inscriptions. We also have Bickerton, Ian J. Rashid, Ismail Khalid, Glenn Richard Barr. They're supposed to be, they have the credentials in the Britannica Online article on Palestine. Then we have Britain, which is the Septuagint with the Apocrypha. And so all of these guys here that you see here are supposed to be scholars in this particular topic that we're going over tonight, because language, Mr. Bakar, is going to be very important, very important, very important. So the list goes on. All right. I wanted to make sure that I left no stone unturned. There's also a very interesting guy by the name of B. Davison. He put out his information in 1976. This is the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldean Lexicon. And what I found very interesting is a guy by the name of Anthony Davis. His publications came about in the 1900s, and he studies now the Hebrew accents of the 21 books of the Bible, and he's also located out in London. And then we have Elieger, we have Ember, we have Faith Comes by Hearing. And they do a pretty excellent job also. They have an audio that you can also listen to. They came about in 2014, where you can study the Bible in Hebrew, Tanakh, and they're located out in Israel. I wanted to make sure that my information that I'm going to be presenting here tonight was as accurate as possible. All right. Again, I didn't want to leave no stones unturned. All of these names here that you see, Mr. McCobb, you can download their information in a PDF form. It's a lot of reading. We're talking about over 2,000 pages. I have not read all 2,000 pages. So what I'm trying to do is pick out the most important segments of their documentation so that we can get a great understanding of what's going on. What I want to do tonight is lead the person to these sources of information, and then it would be up to you to further your reading to make sure that you get a complete understanding on what is actually happening in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and Daniel, the 3rd chapter. Also, there's a Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. They also do a pretty good job on comprehensive Aramaic. They have a lexicon. So I found that pretty good. And also Holiday has a concise Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. And notice now that I'm really concentrating on the Aramaic lexicons and not the Hebrew. Now, the Hebrew is a rendition of the Aramaic, and I just want everybody, I'll go into it a little bit more deeper as we go on with the class here tonight, because things are going to be a little bit different from what you're finding in the Greek Septuagint that you might be finding in some of your lexicons. So just bear with me here. There's a guy by the name of Julian. He does a grammar of biblical Hebrew. He's located out there in Rome. And then there's the Oxford. The guy, he's from Oxford. And his name is Kosik E and A.E. Cowell. And his writings came about in 1910. And so as you see, the list goes on and on and on with some of the guides that I have been looking at, just to make sure that the information that I'm going to be giving here is correct. And once again, if anybody wants anything that I'm showing here tonight, I will be more than happy to share my PowerPoint presentation and everything that I'm sharing with you here tonight. I will be able to give that to you so you can double check everything that I'm saying here tonight. And the list goes on. And I'm more interested in the grammar of the Hebrew language, as we see with a guy by the name of Moses Stewart. His writings came about in 1828. And this is some more information that I've been digging up, looking at the Aramaic. The Aramaic is going to be very important here tonight, and the different types of lexicons. So these are the sources that I'm going to be bringing out tonight, once again, to prove my point. Now, authorship bias statement. I had to put this together here to let everybody know the sources of information that I'm going to be bringing out here tonight, and some of the scholars and their perspective on how they're bringing about this information, so that nobody says that, listen, you know what, they have an agenda. So this website author was not conscripted by any religious denomination or sectarian organization or group to produce the site. References are those listed in the bibliography and are from a wide range of scholarship, including Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, and secular sources. In addition, cognate languages such as Arabic, Old Persian, and Akkadian have been taken into consideration when analyzing hard to understand words and phrases where there seems to be a wide divergence of meanings presented by the lexigraphers. Graphers. So again, let me read this to you one more time. There seems to be a wide divergence of meanings represented by the different lexicons. The website author takes the viewpoint that the Bible is produced by God, and at the same time penned by human agents utilizing their own style and vocabulary. So then God created man and provided guidance in producing the Bible. This is no doubt a very simplistic explanation for every complex process. So the reason why I'm going into detail so much about this presentation tonight is because in order to, I believe, to come to proper understanding of Torah, we must make sure that we do our diligent research in making sure that the information that we're presenting is correct. And history is part of it with dates. We have to have dates. So Shalom, Mishpachah, let's go ahead and get things started. Now, in order for us to get a complete understanding of what's going on, because the main topic is actually Daniel, the 3rd chapter. But before we go into Daniel, the 3rd chapter, what I want to do is go ahead and jump right into the fire, okay, with the boys here. And we're going to start with Daniel, the 2nd chapter, verse 28. And it reads now in the NSB version, but we will be going into the Aramaic. This says now that there is a God in heaven. This is Daniel speaking. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what would take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. So just to give a quick recap of what is going on here, Nebuchadnezzar sees a vision that is so important. And Daniel explains this vision to Nebuchadnezzar. Well, we have the head of gold. We have the Medo-Persian Empire that comes up next. After that, we have the Greeks. After that, we have the Romans. And then we have the 10 toes, which we believe is the EU, which is the European Union. So that's going to be very important. And Daniel breaks this down with preciseness when he shares it now with Nebuchadnezzar. But notice now is that Daniel is not giving himself the credit in this revealing of the dream, that he's actually giving it to the Father so that Nebuchadnezzar understands exactly where this interpretation of his dream is coming from. Now, I want everyone to please take note that from this point hence, going forward, we will be looking at the Aramaic version of Daniel chapter 2. And those of you now that are looking at your King James version, watch how the Aramaic slightly differs from your Hebrew, and it varies very different from your King James version. So what I wanted to do now is to make sure that everybody follows along, and we have in the second column or the second row, we have the English, and above that we have it in Hebrew. I'm not going to read it in Hebrew because I don't want to be here all night. But again, I'm sharing my screen, and if anybody wants any part of this presentation, I will gladly email it to you. Verse 29 in Aramaic, you, O king, your thoughts upon your bed were ascending what will come to pass hereafter. And the revealer of secrets has caused you to know what is to be. Verse 30. But as for me, this secret thing being revealed, this is Daniel talking, this secret being revealed to me is not on account of wisdom that is in me more than any living, but to the intent that they should make known the interpretation to the king, and you might know the thoughts of your heart. Verse 31, you, O king, you were looking, and behold, a great image. That grand image standing in front of you is splendor and extraordinary, and its appearance frightening. That image, its head was of pure gold. That's going to be very important. That image, its head was of pure gold. Its chest area and its arms of silver. Its abdominal area and its thighs of bronze. Verse 33 and 34. Its legs of iron, its feet part of them iron, and part of them post shard. You were looking until that a stone was cut not by human hands, and struck the image against its feet of iron and potsherd, and it broke them in pieces. And it came, and at the same time, the iron, the potsherd, the silver, and the gold fell into pieces together, and it became a shaft from a summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, and there wasn't any place found for them. Then the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Verse 36, This is the dream, and we will declare its interpretation before the king. You, O king, which is Nebuchadnezzar, are king of kings. For the sovereign of Shamayim or heaven gave you the kingdom, power, and might, and honor. And wherever they are dwelling, the children of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the sky, he gave them into your hand and made you ruler over them all. You, which is Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Verse 39. And in your track will arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another kingdom, a third, that of bronze, which shall rule in all the earth. Verse 40. Then a fourth kingdom, it shall be strong like the iron, just as iron breaketh in pieces and poundeth everything, and so like iron that crushes, all those it will break in pieces and crush. Verse 41. And whereas you observe the feet and toes, part of them potsherd and part iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the hardness of the iron shall be within it. And so corresponding to that which you saw, iron being mixed with shard clay material. Then verse 42. Moreover, the toes of the feet, part of them iron and part of them potsherd, part of the end of the kingdom will be mighty, and part of it will be brittle. Verse 43. That which you saw, the iron mixed with shards clay material, they shall be mixing themselves by human gene. Okay, they would be mixing themselves by human gene, but would not be holding together. Behold, like iron not blending with potsherd. Verse 44. But now in their those kings' days, the mighty one of heaven shall set up a kingdom, for that eternity shall not be destroyed, and the kingdom should not be left to another people. It shall shatter and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it will endure for eternity. Verse 45. Insomuch as you saw that a stone was cut from the mountain without human, it has instruments or instrumentality, and broken pieces of iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and also the gold. The great God has made known to the king what shall be hereafter. And so the dream is certain and its interpretation trustworthy. This is where it gets very interesting. Nebuchadnezzar, the king, then fell upon his face and did Daniel homage. Now, I know that it says in a lot of the King James versions, the NIV versions, and a lot of other versions, that it says that Nebuchadnezzar then fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel. And there is a difference between definitions of the word homage and the word worship. Those of us that are familiar with Hebrew, you will see in the last part of the word, you have the Samek, the Gadesh, and the Dalet, which is Sigad. And that's the word that is being given for homage versus the word Shakak, which is the word for worship. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more as we move on. So as Daniel is revealing or has revealed this dream to Nebuchadnezzar, we see Nebuchadnezzar paying homage to Daniel. And like I said, we're looking at this now in Aramaic. And the reason why we're looking at this in Aramaic is because Daniel, the 2nd chapter, Daniel, the 3rd chapter, 4th, 5th, 6th, and some of the 7th chapter is all written in Aramaic. So what I'm trying to do here tonight is to make sure that we get the best version and making sure that we have a great understanding on what is going on in chapters 2 through 7, which is written in Aramaic. So once again, moreover, a cereal offering and sweet odors, he, which is Nebuchadnezzar, commanded to be offered for him. So they had this great ceremony because Daniel now was able to mediate and use, or what we might call channeling, where he was able to pray to the Father. Daniel prayed to the Father to get an interpretation of the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and also pay very close attention to those that have actually read Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Daniel also speaks with the other 3 young men here, which is Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, which are Babylonian names. He also spoke to them regarding the vision or the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. Daniel 2:47, the king speaking to Daniel and saying, this is going to be very important, of a truth, the God of you all, he is a God of gods, referring now to the mighty one or the God of Daniel. And also, I want to bring to everybody's attention, those of us, once again, that understand the Hebrew or the Hebrew, you will always be able to find in the Aramaic, when it makes mention of the word God, we have the Aleph, Lamed, He, which is the word Allah. All right, so I don't want anybody to be afraid if you hear me throughout the night say the word Allah. The word Allah means God. Is not a name, but it's just a title. All right, so don't be afraid by using the word Allah. I have no issues with that. He is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, seeing that you were able to reveal this secret. Verse 48, the king then made Daniel great. So how did he make him great? He gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief governor over all Babylon's wise men. Now, we have here the beginning of a problem. Daniel is not Babylonian. He is a Hebrew. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego are all Hebrews, but they were given Babylonian names. It also makes mention that Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were so wise. They were wiser than the wise men, the astrologers of Babylon. They were 10 times as wise as they were. And so we see now, once again, Israelites moving up the chain of command in authority in a Babylonian system where they now is taking precedence over other Babylonian officials. And if anybody knows anything about heritage and successorship, that is not a good thing. Those that are ruling in authority now would have to think and be of the bloodline lineage of the Babylonians. So let me read on. Verse 49. Then Daniel asked of the king, and so he appointed, watch this now, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administrations of the province of Babylon. Watch this now, and Daniel into the king's court. Daniel had a much higher position than Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And so when we begin to look at the administration services that was going on in Babylon, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego had predominance in Babylon over the chief judges, the other leaders, legislation, the judicial system. They had the rule over all of that, over the natives of Babylon. But Daniel had the higher position because he reigned now in the king's court, meaning that was that he would be like the Supreme Court justice. Whatever Daniel says goes, and Daniel only falls second in command under Nebuchadnezzar. Now, please continue to follow along through the slideshow or through your personal Bible. I'm looking at now the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia with the word Shadrach. Shadrach is the Babylonian name of one of the so-called Hebrew children. Shadrach is probably the Sumerian form of the god Ba Kaduru Aki, servant of sin. Sin, not as is a person told a lie, but there was a god called sin. In order for us to be able to understand exactly what's going on, because we have to understand history. And it's almost like, because I think we have a couple of police officers that's on the line here tonight. In order for us to get a clear picture of what's going on in Babylon, we need to know what the scenery was like. And this was a nation that worshiped a lot of Babylonian gods. Shadrach is actually the name of one of the Babylonian deities. Watch this now. And we have to also, once again, now be able to understand the Sumerian language. We're going to touch on just a little bit the Akkadian language, because this was the national language at that time. And as we know, Abraham, our father Abraham, actually came from the land of Sumer. So he spoke Sumerian. So Mishpachar, again, it is very important for us to be able to understand, while putting the pieces of this puzzle together, that we understand the culture and the language, because Israel now has to adapt to now this culture that they're unfamiliar with. And there would be consequences behind not following the culture. And in order for you now to follow the culture, you must understand the language. So it has been suggested by Mendenhall that we should read Merdechai instead of Shadrach. And watch how this is so important. Since there were no vowels in the original Hebrew or Aramaic, and since the sh sound or the sha sound and the mem sound, as well as the resh sound or the r sound and the d are much alike in the old alphabet in which Daniel was written, this change is quite possible. So again, this is the reason why I went through at the beginning of this presentation all of the linguistic scholars here, as they listen. These guys were able to do things that I'm not familiar with. I can, if let me see how can I say this? If I see Akkadian, Sumerian, Ugaritic, I can pretty much tell the difference in the writings, but I'm to be honest with you, I cannot read it. I'm trusting in the scholars that I brought to your attention a little bit earlier. Now, the Hebrew I can read. I just want to make sure we're only up and up with that. The next young man who was given a Babylonian name was Meshach, and he was named after a god by the name of Aku. I'm not going to read all of this because it's a whole lot. I want to keep the ball rolling, so I'm just going to read just a little bit. The name and its etymology, and even now understanding etymology of names in words is going to be very important. And if we was to take away from understanding the etymology of words, we're going to run into another problem, because we need to understand what was this temple, this golden image that Nebuchadnezzar made. Now, Meshach, who was named after the god called Aku, the name in its etymology, this is probable Sumerian reading of the well-known Babylonian name written with the characters for the servant, which is Sem or Ardu, and the group standing for the moon god Sin. It was written out in this form, E-N-Z-U-Z-U-E-N, otherwise Aku. The whole meaning is servant of the moon god. This ruler was king of Lasa, compared, because there's an article behind it. It is generally identified with Arioch, which we can find also in the book of Genesis, the 14th chapter, verse 9. So I'm going to leave it there. But if anybody wanted to go in depth with it, I have the information. I have a ton of information. And once again, if anybody wants to read this PowerPoint slideshow that I have, I would be more than willing. And it's free. On top of that, it's free. I would give it to you for free. I paid for a lot of this stuff, but I would give it to you for free. That's how sincere and honest I am, where I want you to know exactly where I'm coming from. Now, the Sumerian god Ba or Kaharduhu Aki, Shadrach, who Shadrach was named after, these are the stones. In the slide to your left, there are writings, and it's describing and sharing with us, and I'll let you know right now that that golden image was actually Marduk. Now, This is some of my proof that I have here. I have stones, and if I give you the PowerPoint, you can actually blow up these stones here, and it will actually show you the pictures and the writings now in Sumerian and in the Akkadian writings, telling you what was this golden figure that Nebuchadnezzar made. And to the right now, it goes on with also the Ugaritic writings that's from Mesopotamia, and is also describing and letting us know what that actual gold figure was. And reading here with the caption now, to the one to the far right, this is Kaduru of Adida, Egypt, mentioning the king Murdoch, and then it has Basilu on the 9th century, and you can also find some of this material now in some of the Smithsonian Institute libraries and museums. Abednego. This piece of information is kind of common. You know, I didn't really have to go through anything to actually get his name. And you can just Google this, and you can just find this on almost any site. But Abednego means servant of Nebu in Akkadian. Nebu being the Babylonian god of wisdom in the Old Testament. Abednego is the Babylonian name given to Azariah, one of the 3 men cast into the blazing furnace but saved from harm by God, as told in the book of Daniel. So I just want everybody once again to be able to understand the scene. All of these boys and Daniel were given Babylonian names representing now Babylonian gods.
Okay, Brother Kassad, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Just real quick.
Okay.
Does this have anything to do with the golden image?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we know that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or a bad Negro, was the ones that was given the names of the different gods, but Belshazzar was given to Daniel. But what does this have to do with the golden image? And I'm going to mute my brother.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm asking everybody to do is to follow along. It's going to take some patience, but like I said earlier, the stones that are shown here, written in the Akkadian language, is letting us know what actually did Nebuchadnezzar make. What was that golden image? And like I said earlier, if anybody wanted to read my notes, I will gladly send over to you everything that I'm reading. I'm sharing here, these 2 stones is sharing with the reader what Nebuchadnezzar actually built. And this is my proof here with these 2 stones, and I have much, much more to share. Now, the image of Nabu supporting scriptures, I'm going to go to the book of Yeshayahu, the 46th chapter, verse 1. Verse 1. To answer some of the questions, or one of the questions that we've received so far from Brother Barry here. When you go to the book of Yeshayahu, the book of Jeremiah, where did all of this come from? Jeremiah, the 46th chapter, verse 1. Verse 1. Let's see, make sure this is the one here. 46 one. Yes, this is it here. This is the Greek Septuagint. Let me get a better version here, because I want everybody to be able to follow along. Let's see, Jeremiah, the 46th chapter. (46 and 1). One second here. Check everything here correct. Sorry for the interruption here. Give me 1 second. Actually, excuse me, it's Isaiah. It's Isaiah 46. Isaiah 46, not Jeremiah, it's Isaiah. It says, Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth, the idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages heavy laden, they were burdened to the weary beast. And so what I found very interesting with this is that we have mention of Bel and we have mention of the word Nebu or Nebo. Nebo now are the Sumerian gods that we have been talking about so far. All of these are the names of Babylonian gods. And we see that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were actually named after the gods that Nebuchadnezzar actually worshiped. Even Nebuchadnezzar, his name within itself, Nabu, is also now representing now Marduk's son, as we see in 46:1. And then we're going to also prove that now in the book of Jeremiah. The book of Jeremiah, the 50th chapter, verse 2. Declare you among the nations and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal not, saying, Babylon is taken. Bel, again, Bel is confounded. Merodach is broken in pieces. Merodach is actually now Marduk. These were the national gods in Babylon. That's the reason why I had made the argument earlier. In order for us to understand what Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were going through, we need to understand what this city actually looked like. It was a city laden with golden images. Jeremiah, the 48th chapter, is going to all come to play. Jeremiah, the 48th chapter, verse 1. I'm going to only read verse 1, but if anybody was interested, it goes more into detail when you read Jeremiah, the 48th chapter, verses 1 through 25. Also, Moab was also doing the same thing. Against Moab, thus saith the sovereign of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, woe unto Nebo. This was the god of Nebuchadnezzar and those prior to Nebuchadnezzar that falls way back into the time of Abraham, when Abraham actually left Sumer into the land that was shown to Abraham, which was the land of promise. So woe unto Nebo, for it is spoiled. Kiphathaim is confounded and taken, and Mishgad is confounded and dismayed. These are all of the names, or some of the names now in Babylon that Nebuchadnezzar has set up in regards to following under now the pantheon now, which is Marduk. Now, here we go. Daniel, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 to 2. Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. That is very important. We need to know, where is Dura in Babylon? Let's read on. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to assemble the satraps, which is just another administration officer, the prefects and the governors, the counselors and the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the province to come to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Quick question, where is Dura in Babylon? Dura is a Palestinian city located 11 kilometers southwest of Hebron in the southern western bank in Hebron, governor of the state of Palestine. I want everybody to pay very close attention. Daniel had already showed Nebuchadnezzar the understanding of the colossal figure. Nebuchadnezzar was that head of gold. After that, we have the Medo-Persian Empire. After that, we have the Greeks. And then after that, we have the Romans. Watch what happens. Nebuchadnezzar makes a statue of all gold. All gold. The reason why Nebuchadnezzar made a statue of all gold, because he did not want his kingdom to ever come to an end. So what is happening now is that Nebuchadnezzar is in denial of the dream that Daniel interpreted for him. Now, when Daniel had interpreted the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar at first gave praise and honor to the God of Daniel. But knowing now how Nebuchadnezzar is that he had a change of heart. A change of heart. That change of heart now caused him to build an everlasting kingdom, which was all gold. All gold. He was not trying to hear the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, and the Romans. That image that he made now was a spit in the face to the God of Daniel after he was given now the revelation. Let's read on. These are the cities. These are the cities now that Nebuchadnezzar ruled. Nineveh, Quatara, all of these cities here now, Nebuchadnezzar was in control of. But what we need to find out now is, where was this statue placed? Because in verse 1, it says, he set up this statue now in the plains of Dara. But we need to find out, where is that? Because
Brother Kassad, can I say something real quick?
okay, go ahead.
It's just 15 seconds, brother. You said that Nebuchadnezzar had a change of heart and that he made the statue that Daniel interpreted was now a statue of gold. And if you can, because I know that you're the host, can you give me a chance after you explain the place of Dura where the statue was set up, that I will tell you that Nebuchadnezzar had never changed his mind.
Okay, so this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do.
Wait, brother, I'm going to say just 5 seconds.
We have to wait. Because what I tried to do at the beginning, I tried to set up rules and regulations.
5 seconds. That I will show that that statue was not the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. And I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay, what we have to do for now, no more questions until I'm done. No more questions. Because when I'm finished with the presentation, all of the questions, the 2 questions I was asked already would have already been answered. But if I'm not given the privilege to finish without interruptions, it's just going to make the situation that much longer. And my promise to everyone that is here, we are not going to do no 4 or 5 hour session. That's not going to happen. All right, because what I have been doing, I have been bringing out scholars. I have been bringing out ancient relics. Ancient relics now, stones that are written in the Akkadian language and the Ugaritic language, saying that it was actually Marduk. If you cannot read Ugaritic, if you cannot read Akkadian, if you cannot read Sumerian, you're going to have a major issue. And what I did now at the beginning of the slide, let me share something again, just in case there might have been a little bit of amnesia. What I did is that I brought out all of these scholars here. All of these scholars, let's go back. All of these scholars are brought out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 38 scholars so far that I brought out, plus the stones that are all saying, based upon the language that was spoken, the Sumerian language, the Akkadian language, the Ugaritic language. All of the information is pointing that Daniel, the idol was not Daniel, but it was actually Marduk. And so the reason why I went so extensive with this, because I don't want nobody to say that is all a bunch of conjecture. Because Salaba has no scholarship, historical proof. I'm bringing out stones and names of scholars. Scholars. How do we get around the fact that it is written on stones and clay tablets that it was actually Marduk? And then when you go to the scriptures in the book of Isaiah, the 46th chapter, it tells you now that these gods, these pantheons now, were actually Sumerian gods. And then to make it even more interesting than that I find interesting, is that Nebuchadnezzar, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, all of these men were named after statues, idols now that was erected in Babylon, but not just Babylon. That's the reason why I brought out this city here. Nebuchadnezzar did not only rule Babylon. All of these cities that is listed here in red, he ruled all of those nations there. Meaning now is that before there was a Babylon, don't forget, there was an Assyrian empire. Nebuchadnezzar overtook, the Assyrian empire. With that being said, also take notice is that at Nebuchadnezzar's height of his strength, listen to this, his empire stretched over 18 million square miles. Square miles. But this idol, this one particular idol now was located in Dura in Babylon. Question, was Daniel present at the inauguration of the golden statue? Now, there's a lot of hypotheticals with this, and I'm not going to argue with it. But I'm here to show now, based upon all of these cities here, and what was now Daniel's responsibility. He was the head man running all of these cities here. Nebuchadnezzar is the man, but you have now Daniel, the chief representative of Nebuchadnezzar, running all of these cities here. When you have now in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they were now, for the most part, centered around Babylon and the city of Dura. Watch how this gets interesting. This is some of, again, putting all of the pieces together, and listen to the words now. Perhaps more likely possibilities, because I believe that Daniel was not there. Perhaps he was away on the king's business and unable to attend. My second argument is that more likely it was simply due to the fact that Daniel may not have been present at the event because of the duties of his office. All of those cities Daniel was in control of. This took place, meaning on this golden statue, it took place in the city of Dura, thought to have been in the area of the city of Uruk, some 95 miles southeast of Babylon. Now, this is where this golden image was erected at. However, Nebuchadnezzar's dominion reigned over 18 million square miles. Since Daniel was the ruler over the province of Babylon proper, it is more likely he was tending to the affairs of his office and was not at the event. Or perhaps it was because of the great respect Nebuchadnezzar had for Daniel and his God. Nebuchadnezzar may well have excused Daniel for attending the event. Now watch this. When you read the book of Daniel, the 3rd chapter, the 2nd and the 3rd chapter, notice that Daniel's name is never mentioned in Daniel, the 3rd chapter. Never mentioned. What happens now is that the Babylonians now, those that were in a power position, they had made mention that there were Yahudims, Jews, who were not bowing down to the golden image. But notice now that they only brought forth Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The question becomes now, why those three? Those three now is because they were in leadership position. What they were trying to do now was to take down this illegal occupation that was running government in Babylon. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were not Babylonians. Can everybody still hear me? Because we had a power outage over on this end.
I can hear you. I can.
But Todd, I could hear you now, but it went
Okay,
out.
great, excellent. I wanted to see it. Can everybody still hear me? We had a power outage. Oh, okay. So what's happening is that the internet has to be rebooted again. So you can't see my PowerPoint anymore, can you?
Nope.
No, we can't see your PowerPoint no more. It went off, Brother Kassad. So
Okay. Let's see, maybe I can use my hotspot. Okay, okay, here we go. Hold on 1 second, Mr. Picard, because this is going to take a few more minutes, and then after that, we're going to take questions. One second here. We have connecting. It just hasn't connected yet.
Todd, what you might want to do if you want to continue the conference is tell everybody to log out, come back in, and then you will be the host again. And it'll be everybody is going to be back on because a lot of times there's a merge. So you might want to do that. I've done that a lot of time at my conference.
give me about a few more minutes here. Okay, Ms. Picard, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, we can see a screen now.
Okay, great. All right, let's get the ball rolling so we can go to the question part of this here. Okay, if I can move the screen. Okay, Daniel 3, the 3rd chapter, verses 3 and 5. And then it said, then this the satraps, the prefects and the governors, the counselors and the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the province were assembled for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, to you the command is given, O peoples, nation, and men of every language, in that the moment you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, the psaltery, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And once again, my argument is that this image is an image of the Babylonian god Marduk, because Nebuchadnezzar is not honoring anymore the God of Daniel. And we're going to show this in the scripture. But whosoever does not worship shall immediately be cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, and the psaltery, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the peoples of every language fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar king had set up. For this reason, that certain Chaldeans came forth and brought charges against the Jews. This is what I was talking about earlier. Verse 8 again. For this reason, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forth and brought charges against the Jews. Watch what happens. They responded and said to Nebuchadnezzar, the king, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, the psaltery, and the bagpipe, and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast in the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon. Now look at verse 8 in comparison to verse 12. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the cities of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve your God, or worship the golden image which you set up. Now, like I said earlier, there were many gods in Babylon that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, but there was a main god based upon stone tablets.
Brother, please, it says your gods.
Okay,
Oh,
you have
worship
to,
holy
I'm gonna have to mute your mic if you interrupt, because I asked kindly.
You can mute me as much as you want, but it says your gods, your Elohims, multiple gods. Oh, worship the golden image, because I'm going to come back at the end of your thing. I just want the audience to get a clear understanding of what you're saying. It says, do not serve your Elohims.
Mishpachar, in order for us to have a civil conversation, every time there's an interruption, and I keep saying, do not interrupt me until I'm done. That way, the class or this presentation is not as long. But that is actually now, that is bad conduct. If I'm asking not, why can't we just hold our questions until I'm done? I'm reading and I'm not even given a chance now.
Come on, Kashad. I'm saying, all I asked was one question, brother. All I asked was one question. Gods. And I am muting my mic right now.
Okay, as I was saying earlier, what I'm going to have to do is mute everybody's mic because my instructions are not being followed. So mics are muted. Therefore, verse 12, there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have disregarded you, Nebuchadnezzar. They do not serve your Elohim, your gods. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image. The golden image is separate from the gods. I made mention earlier, all of the gods that was in Babylon, but the main god was this golden God, which was Marduk, which can be proven in the stones and in these clay tablets. So these men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve your God or worship the golden image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring, specifically now, Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these men were brought before the king. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image? So there were many gods in Babylon and throughout all of the hosts of the cities that was under the regime of Nebuchadnezzar. And I made mention now is that when you look at geographically now the location, his kingdom ran 93 million square miles. And I showed the cities. All of these cities now were in subjection to Nebuchadnezzar, and there were gods set up there. But the main god was the god called Marduk. And Marduk's son was named Nebu. Now, in verse 15, Nebuchadnezzar says, if you are ready at the moment, meaning Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, if you are ready at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, and the psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made. Very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into to the midst of the furnace of a blazing fire. And what God, watch this now, and what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? This image that Nebuchadnezzar made, we have now Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego being told, what God is there who can deliver out of my hands? Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego did not follow Babylonian gods. So what's happening now is that Nebuchadnezzar is challenging the God of Israel. That's what he's doing. Nebuchadnezzar is saying that there is no God that can deliver out of my hands. What's the response? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, which is possessive, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of the blazing fire." But watch what I found interesting. When Daniel was able to decipher Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Nebuchadnezzar gave all honor and respect to the God of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar builds a golden image, all gold. Daniel never broke down a vision of Nebuchadnezzar of all gold. That all gold image represented the Babylonian god, Babylonian god Marduk, once again, which can be proven in these stone tablets. It's saying that it's Marduk. So again, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of the blazing fire. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Now that is a slap in the face to the king Nebuchadnezzar. You guys were in a position of dominance and rulership. And I told you, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, that when you hear these instruments, you're supposed to bow down to this golden image. All of a sudden now, Nebuchadnezzar gets amnesia, and he no longer respects the God of Daniel, and then tells Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, who can deliver you out of my hands? What God can do that? Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego said that our God can actually now deliver us now from your hands, Nebuchadnezzar. Watch this. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Verse 18. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods, plural, or worship the golden image that you set up. So again, there was a plethora of gods in Babylon. We're not going to worship those minor gods, nor are we going to worship now this golden image that you set up now in Dura. We're not going to do it. Now, verses 19 to 23. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Okay, then, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, if you're saying that your God, who you serve, is mightier than my God, which is this golden image that is set up, let's see whose God is strongest. The same thing happened during the time of Elijah. During the time of Elijah now, when we had Israelites now serving now Babylonian gods. And you had Elijah saying, listen, you know what? Making mockery of the gods of Babylon and say, well, listen, you know what? You guys have been praying from morning to noon, cutting yourselves, screaming, jumping on top of the altar. Maybe your God is asleep. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe he's going on a trip. And then you see at the end of that battle between who is the mighty God, and that is the God of Israel, that's when Ezekiel now, I'm only showing a comparison. This is now when Ezekiel now says, listen, you know what? Flood the altar with water. Do it again. Do it again. Saturate now the animal sacrifice also. And then when Ezekiel now called on the name of the Father, guess what? The water was licked up and the altar, the offering now was all burnt up. And then what happened now, because of the disobedience now of Israel, Elijah had all of those priests now rounded up and he had them killed. And we have the same situation that's happening here now. Who is the true God? Nebuchadnezzar has who once believed in the God of Israel, stopped believing in the God of Daniel. Verse 20, he commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If anybody ever saw a house fire, I saw a house fire before, and you could only get within a certain amount of feet where you begin to even feel the heat. But this heat here now is 7 times hotter than normal. I'm just trying to get everybody to picture how hot this furnace was. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire? They replied to the king, certainly, O king. He said, look, I see 4 men loose and walking in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like the son of Elohim. Did the 3 men understand the book of Jeremiah, the 42nd chapter, verse 11? And the answer is yes. Daniel understood the writings of Jeremiah about the 70 weeks. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were men of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and they also knew the prophecy. Daniel was in contact with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and the reason why I say that is because when it came time to decipher the dream, Daniel also communicated with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Jeremiah 42:11 says, do not be afraid of the king of Babylon, whom you are now fearing. Do not be afraid of him. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego was not afraid of Nebuchadnezzar, his minor gods, or his major god, which was Marduk. Declared the sovereign, for I am with you to save you and deliver you from his hands. Whose hands? The king of Babylon.
So, brother, my brother,
you keep doing it over and over again. I keep
that you are saying right now.
This is so disrespectful.
No.
I keep telling you that you can't say anything until I'm done. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of the blazing fire and called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out. Listen to this. Nebuchadnezzar said before that there is no God, or who is the God that can deliver you, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, out of my hands. I told you and gave you Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego an opportunity. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Bow down to this golden image. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego said that we will not. We would not serve you, Nebuchadnezzar, that way. We would not serve your minor gods, nor the golden image. But watch how the conversation now changes. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of the blazing fire and called, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High. All of a sudden, you know what? He knows now about the Most High again. Come out. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on their bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their heads singed, or it didn't have the scent smell, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Watch this. It gets no clearer than this. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach." Wait a minute. You just said, Nebuchadnezzar, who is the God that can deliver out of my hand? But all of a sudden now, he's going to acknowledge the God of Israel. He says, Baruch, or blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's commandments, and yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any God except their own God. Watch this now. This is like, this is no disrespect to anybody that's on the line. This is basic 101 for dummies. All right. Therefore, I, Nebuchadnezzar, make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. So watch this. This golden statue, if this was the God of all gods, then that God now would have adhered to Nebuchadnezzar, and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego would have died in the fire. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego said that, Nebuchadnezzar, we would not serve you in that fashion, your minor gods nor your major God, and basically, the hell with them. Now we have Nebuchadnezzar saying, there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. The golden image, which was Marduk, came into battle with the God of Israel, and he failed. Then the king called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon.
Hey, Brother Kassad, I just want to say one thing real quick. You keep saying
This is terrible. This is terrible. I am not given the respect. And everybody else on this line, I want to thank you for your participation and the respect that you gave me and allow me to finish my presentation. And the interruptions that I had, I could have been done 20 minutes ago, giving you guys the opportunity now to spend the time with your families. So now what I'm going to do, all right, when you raise your hand, if anybody has any questions, name the slide, and I will try to elaborate on that slide more. But let me say this in ending. Nebuchadnezzar, because of his disobedience now, in Daniel, the 4th chapter, Daniel he turns into a madman. He turns into like this beast now, and he's eating grass for his now punishment against Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Nebuchadnezzar knew and gave honor to the God of Daniel for breaking down his dream. And then now going to turn face and say, listen, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, there is no other God than the gods that I have set up that could deliver out of my hand. None. And so with that, I'm going to open up the floor, and I'm going to look at some of the hands that are raised, and I'm going to try my best to answer the questions. Okay, Mr. Bakar, in order for you to speak, you have to raise your hand. You will not be able to unmute yourself. We have brother IYCF.
Shalom, shalom,
You
my
have
brother.
the floor.
This is Prince. Shalom.
Oh, Prince.
Great,
Oh, shalom, all right.
great message, man. Great lesson, great message. I had one question though.
Yes, sir.
In Daniel's 2:49, you put that translation up there in the scripture underneath of the Ivrit, well, the Aramaic. Had you tried to translate that? Because it appears as if it doesn't say what the translation says.
Okay, you said, let me go back to that. Okay, you said slide number 49, is it? No, you just
I
said.
don't know. Daniel's
Um,
2:48, 2:49.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's pull that up right quick, sir. Two. Okay, so what verse is in question?
2:48.
Oh, the whole verse?
The king then made Daniel. I can't see what you say after that. The king then made Daniel. Adonai Malachi, Ladani Al, Ladani Daniel, Rabbi.
Right.
That doesn't translate to the king made Daniel. What does it say after that on your end? The king made Daniel master? Much?
We have, because what's happening here with the Aramaic, and as we read it in the Hebrew, it's going to be different. And the reason why it's different that way is because they're leaning more towards the Aramaic definitions versus the Hebrew, with the understanding that there are similarities between the Aramaic and the Hebrew. And so what the translators are trying to do is to look at it and give the definitions according to the Aramaic, because as I stated earlier, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is written in Aramaic. Verses 1, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, those chapters are actually written in Hebrew. So I'm very glad that you're paying attention. So what we're reading, Moray, is the Aramaic rendition. So I couldn't even go to the Strongs because you're not going to get the same definitions. It's not going to say the same thing. No, you're absolutely 100% correct.
Okay. All right. I'm going on mute. Thank you.
All right.
Torah.
Okay, Mr. McCall, are there any more questions? Because Moray did ask a very good question. And this is the reason why when I went up, let's see if I can do this right quick. I want to share something with you right quick here. Hold on 1 second. I'll move that out the way. What I wanted everyone to take notice to was slide number 11. I wanted everybody to make note that from this point going forward, we would be looking at Daniel chapter 2 in the Aramaic version. And what I should have did was been a little bit more clearer, is that when you look at it in the Aramaic version versus the Hebrew version, it's not going to say the same thing at all. It isn't. Okay. I want to see if anybody has their hand up. Okay. If no one else has any questions, or if anybody wants my PowerPoint, I would gladly share it with you. And let me just do one thing right quick before we leave. I want to read Daniel, let me see if I can pull it up right quick. I want to read Daniel, the 3rd chapter. Excuse me, Daniel, the 2nd chapter, verse Daniel 2:29. If anybody wants this PowerPoint presentation, please leave your email information in the chat. Verse in the Hebrew, Daniel 2:29, we have Enta Maka Ra Yonoka Al Mishkavaka. We have the Samek Likuma Die Li Hiwe Arkaye Dina Wa Gele Razaya Hoda'aka Madi Le Hiwe. And it reads this way in the English and the King James Version: As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, which should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee which should come to pass. Now, you notice now in Daniel 2:29, what we read in the Aramaic does not say exactly what we have here in the Hebrew Old Testament transliteration on the King James Version. It's not written the same. What we have here on the screen is Aramaic version of it, and then Daniel 2:29 on the King James Version is reading slightly different. So I want to thank everybody for taking time, your busy schedule. And what I'm going to do is end tonight's presentation. Okay, here we have someone, okay, you can unmute them. Okay, Maury Prince. Yes, 364-083. Your hand is raised.
Yes. Hey, shalom, family. I wanted to talk some more about some information that you had given based on one of the things that I'm having a problem with, that I'm still having a problem with from the other day. And I don't think your presentation was adequate enough to explain Daniel being out of town. I do understand that, that Babylon was a vast kingdom, but we have to understand something, that when
Brother Steve, I can no longer hear you.
and it was over a province, right? Over the province of Babylon. From verse 46 in chapter 2, all the way to the very last verse, there's not only homage being bestowed upon Daniel, but we got even some homage being paid to the God of Daniel, because he calls him the God of gods, the God of kings and the revealer of secrets. Then he becomes a ruler, right? And he's over basically, like you said, he becomes second in command. Like I was always taught, when we look at Torah, Torah is written with no breaks. There's no punctuation. There's no big G, little g. So you're not playing the fonts game. None of that. And when you look at Daniel chapter 2, as it goes into chapter 3, I need an explanation on, first of all, Daniel being out of town, when the thing says that he's sitting in the king's gate. That's the last sentence in chapter 2, that he's sitting in the king's gate, which basically means he's in the palace. So he's in a visible position, you know what I mean? So that there's no way that he would be like out of town. And then the statue, now it tells you that he was a ruler, and he was a ruler over a province, not providence. He kept saying province of Babylon. And then the statue was also set up in a province of Babylon. And the statue comes right after all of these things are bestowed upon Daniel. So what I'm trying to figure out is, we got a thing on all these gods that Babylon has, which none of these gods are named specifically. But we do know that after Daniel is made a ruler and he gets his boys on, then a golden image comes. And Daniel never has to go and face any fire because of this golden image. So it would almost stand to prove that the golden image had to be whoever was bestowed all of these new change in status, all of these great gifts. It said, and made a ruler, and never ever once was accused of not falling down to the golden image. And we know that it's either he either fell down to the golden image when the music played, or he didn't, or he wasn't he wasn't part of that deal. So the only way that could happen is if the image was him and not no Marduk, because we don't have. When the boys said we will not worship your gods nor the golden image, we have to, like you said, in basic comprehension 101, we have to include any of those gods, Nebo, who you talked about, any of the other gods. You have to put those in the sentence of we will not worship your gods. That would include Marduk. That would include Nebo. But then the golden image is separated. This is basic comprehension, and it's not done just once. It's done multiple times. The golden image was separated. So tell me how Daniel was out of town, and how do you just, other than these tablets, we know that historical information can be played with. We already know that we got people claiming they're the Jews that aren't the Jews. And so we know that there's lies definitely going on. So how, and if nobody has the statue, how can you be 1,000,000% certain that it was Marduk? And I'm off.
Okay. Slide number 34. Question, was Daniel present at the inauguration of the golden statue? If you were to go back and listen to my explanation with that, I believe that he was, but I also said perhaps. I said perhaps 3 times, and I gave 3 possibilities. I said perhaps he was away on the king's business and unable to attend. More likely, it was simply due to the fact that Daniel may not have been present at the time of at the event because of the duties of his office. And then what I did was that I showed how vast Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom was. I made mention that his kingdom stretched over 18 million square miles. Now, going back to the slide number 34. Remember, this took place in a specific location called the Plains of Dura, thought to have been in the area of the city of Urek. Then my argument was Dura is a Palestinian city located 11 kilometers southwest of Hebron in the southern West Bank in the Hebron governing state of Palestine. I go back to the possibilities where we have, it was in the area of the city of Urek, some 95 miles southeast of Babylon. Since Babylon was the ruler, since Daniel was the ruler over the province of Babylon proper, it is more likely he was tending to the affairs of his office and was not at the event. Perhaps it was because of the great respect Nebuchadnezzar had for Daniel and his God. Nebuchadnezzar may well have excused Daniel for attending the event, which I don't put too much weight on it. My question is to you, this question here now is, you are aware that in Daniel, the 3rd chapter, Daniel, the name Daniel is never mentioned? I keep Stephen, I don't know whether you can still hear me or not, but my question was, were you aware that in Daniel, the 3rd chapter, Daniel's name is never mentioned? And we know that the Babylonians were trying to get rid of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and Daniel. I can't tell you 100% that Daniel was there. My argument is, as you and I are talking, is that Daniel's name is not mentioned. And what I find interesting now is that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were delivered upon their own merits of righteousness. It had nothing to do with Daniel. Just you and I just talking, and along with everybody else, obviously. If Daniel was there, then it could be said the reason why the boys were delivered is because of Daniel. And I just find it interesting is that it comes a point in time when everybody has to stand on his or her own merit of righteousness. When Daniel now is thrown into the lion's den, guess what? That had nothing to do with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And so just mere fact that each one of these men were able to stand on their own merit, I found interesting. There was another question that you have, but if you can ask it again, I would appreciate it. Because I can't see anybody's hand up. Oh, okay, we have Lemuel. Okay, Lemuel,
Yeah.
you're up.
Can you hear me, Kassan?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
I am just learning. I was You almost sign out, and I was trying to find where you find this little hand to raise on the computer. And then when the guy asked the question, I played around and eventually found it. Yeah, I had a little concern, not very much a great question, but the area where it says that they will not worship the gods of the Babylonians or whatever god that's associated with their mighty one, and the golden image. If I am to get the understanding, it says if we want to read it like in another form, if we are to read it in another form, let's say the three sons or the three children would say, I'm not going to serve your gods, Marduk, Nike, and say list a few names there, nor the image, Marduk. Would that be a proper way of understanding what you are saying here? Because if the golden image is Marduk, let's say if it's Marduk, then that image then automatically is a god too. You know what? I don't know if you get what I'm trying to ask here. Concern here. The image, if the image is Marduk, then Marduk is a god. I think this is what the other guy was trying to say or trying to explain.
Right. Because what I'm trying to explain is that the other gods were lesser gods. The main god is Marduk.
Okay.
And what's happening now is that I brought out some scholars.
Yeah, I got all of that. I
Right.
do understand all of that with the writings on the stones and all that, and all the different people who are versed in that type of language and Aramaic and things like that. I got all of that that you are reinforcing what you are bringing out here, or what you are depicting here. I got all of that, and I respect that. That your source of information and so forth. I got that, but I just was wondering about this Marduk and the gods. So what are you saying? That one section is lesser god, and the other one is a greater god? I mean, higher god.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So I mean, when you begin to read I guess what's happening with me is that being that I have read some of the material and it's telling you who that image was versus a person who has not read it, how can you now say that that's not what it is when you never read it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I get you. I get you what you're bringing out.
Okay, because I know
You know,
I think,
I'm not throwing away what you're saying. I can understand where you're getting your source of information and what is leading you to say on a better foundation why you see this, because you have certain evidential value that is being found in the internet or wherever, and you can research it and you can look at it. Before you close up, I will need I don't know if I get a copy of this so I could go through it, because I got into the room class late. I was driving, coming from work.
right. Okay, the reason why I made a list of over 30.
Yeah, I saw you were scrolling down to it. Yeah, I saw it.
Right. The reason why I did that and I brought out so many names and PDFs that each brother can actually read is because I come from a school where people would just say stuff and they had no source of information to back up what they're saying. And now that we live in a time of information, I'm not bringing out something that is bogus. I'm telling you where I'm getting the information from. Now, if a brother now wants to believe that that golden statue was a statue of Daniel or Ishtar or Netu, that's fine. That's fine. I'm only saying that the reason why I'm saying that it is Marduk is because of these scholars that I've looked into and what they're saying as they now begin to translate the cuneiform, the Sumerian text, the Akkadian writings, and the Ugaritic. They're telling you what it is. And then I was even fair. I said that I can read and understand the Hebrew, but I cannot read Sumerian. I cannot read Akkadian and Ugaritic, but there are some guys that are qualified to do it. Just check it out for yourself. It's just, I mean, just check it out.
On the other hand here, and I don't mean to take up all your time, but when you say Hebrew, are you talking about the modern Hebrew or the Paleo Hebrew or the ancient Hebrew?
Well, right, because we know what's in the Nakud system, what is happening now with those that are calling themselves Jewish and everything like that. So no, like I mentioned earlier, there are vowels in Hebrew, but the way that the Ashkenazi Jews, the way that they're doing it is that they're putting in these vowel points based upon the way that they speak, all of these glottal sounds. And the closest language in comparison to Hebrew will actually be Arabic. That's the reason why I had made mention earlier, don't be afraid of the word Allah, because it's the Aleph, Lamed, Hey. And what happens now is that when you read the book of Daniel, chapters 2 through 7, you're going to see the word Allah mentioned a lot. Daniel is calling God by what God is a title, but he's using the word Allah, which is the Aleph, Lamed, Hey.
The both that is used is the El and the Elohim. People don't use the Eloah and the other one, the Eloah and the other one, Elohim or something like that that they pronounce. Most Hebrew brothers also use El and Elohim. They don't use Eloah, and that's what I was trying to learn also. This is not commonly used, the word Eloah. Yeah, but the word Allah, it means God Almighty One in Arabic. Yeah, I know basically that. But yeah, I would like to get a copy of that so I could look at it, but we could talk more about it. Okay, brother Tim, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna get the next brother. He has his hand up. 36. I think that's Moray Prince. Is that Prince? 364-083.
All right, yeah, it's a limb, man. I'm back on. Listen,
Who are you with again?
It's Steve, but I go by Halim. But anyway, the only reason, first of all, I want to apologize for what Barry was doing, man, because now we can't have like an open discussion. I've been trying to like unmute my mic, and and I guess you've had to mute the platform or whatever. But I'm gonna apologize for that because I think it's really hurting the discussion. However, like I was trying to explain earlier, we have, and you can even see this just with the COVID thing. There is a flood of information out there, and and it's up to whoever if you want to take something as fact, or or just dive into it a little more. It's really up to you. But the thing I'm looking at here, brother, is you have these bibliographies and you have these footnotes, but nobody has the statute. I asked you that the other day. You told me that it was melted down by the Greeks or whoever you said had it. I'm not sure, if you gave me a clear understanding on that. But is it fair to say that men that have been, looking at this within the last 125 to 200 years, and never had the statue, never had the gold lineage, right? but they got writings and they got tablets, and we're sure that this thing has this thing was that God Marduk. I feel like, in your presentation, you were totally ignoring the scripture, because if it is saying we will not worship neither your gods nor the golden image, like we trying to explain earlier, the golden image isn't even associated with a god. It's a golden image, and the whole, every time it's talked about it, it's speaking about the golden image. And yes, chapter 3 of Daniel does not mention Daniel. And I'll be willing to bet that none of these slides that you're putting up mentions Daniel. So this is the thing. When we're talking about a Babylonian writing versus a history of our people that's written, and I'm going to roll with what I got in scripture versus what you're putting up here. I've come over the years to find that everything that we learn needs to be scrutinized. From the eating 3 times a day, from the world is spinning around 60,000 miles, it's spinning around, it's rotating and orbiting. When every day we see the sun go from east to west. That's what we see happening every day. But we got all of this information, all of this stuff that they put in us. And we be thinking it's the truth, and we thinking it's like straight up on point. We are clearly seeing that whatever this golden image is not a god. I don't know why you're trying to make it a god. And all of these white boys that you put up here, I have beef with it. Just like I have beef with the white boys saying they the Jews. I got beef with it because that's not the information that we have in the scripture. And if none of this stuff is showing anything about Daniel, I don't see, like what you just put up, I don't see, and I'm looking, I don't see Daniel.
Okay. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is answer your questions to the best of my ability. This is where I'm at in my walk. 1 + 1 is 2. I don't care whether the white man says it, the Chinese man says it. Facts are facts. 1 + 1 is 2. So when sound information comes out, I'm not looking at the color of the person. What I'm going to do now is do a fact check to make sure that the information is correct. If you notice now, the reason why I brought out so many scholars is because I wanted to see whether or not all of the scholars were saying basically the same thing, and they were. Now, if it's one lone individual, okay, then I can understand your point. Once again, now, this golden statue, okay, this image that Nebuchadnezzar made, like I had said earlier, do you find it interesting, at least, that Daniel gave Nebuchadnezzar an interpretation of a colossal figure that was made up of many different metals? But we have now a situation where Nebuchadnezzar is acting in defiance, meaning now is that he sets up a golden image. That golden image, because remember, if the head was represented Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar made an image of all gold. There's no breaks in succession with the next rulership. Nebuchadnezzar is saying is that my kingdom, my gods, they will last forever, is what I'm doing. Watch this. Can you now see my screen? Can anybody see my screen that I have up now? Oh. Okay, hold on. Let me see, because I think we out of the distraction. Okay, so everybody should be unmuted now. Aki, can you now see my screen?
Yeah, I see the screen.
Okay, again, only thing that I'm trying to share is that I'm not making this up. What I'm about to show you here now, this is the golden boat of Marduk and Nabu in Babylon. I have been talking about this all night. The second part of this paragraph, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits and a breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dara in the province of Babylon. And this is in the book of Daniel, chapter 3, which we just read. What I'm trying to share, hold on for a second. What I'm trying to share, that there are writings on this cylinder of Nebuchadnezzar, and it's in the museum, and it's listed under item number B9. Now watch this. I want to show you something. I'm going to go to now my PDF. Can you now see what I'm looking at?
Yeah, I was trying to read the other one. I was
Okay,
there was stuff on the other page.
Okay, this is the cylinder of Nebuchadnezzar. I'm going to show you something here. This is the golden boats of Marduk and Nabu in Babylon. I'm not going to be able to read all of it, but I can share the information with you. I have no issues with that, because they're telling you once again, these gods in Babylon were one, Marduk, Nabu, and also the names of the 3 boys that had Babylonian gods' names. I just want to show you something. This is the journal here. These are the reports that I have, and I will share it with you. This is what I wanted to show you here. This is the writings that is on these tablets and on that vessel that I just showed you. This is the writings. And the interpretation now of it is that, being that Daniel is not mentioned in Daniel, the 3rd chapter, of course not. Daniel's name is not going to be mentioned there. But guess whose names are mentioned there? Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Now I'm gonna keep on going down. You have the translation, when Marduk, the great Lord, had truly created me. He's giving, this is Nebuchadnezzar in the translation that these 37 scholars are translating. And some of these guys are atheists. So they have nothing to gain throughout all of this. I'm gonna show you some more stuff. This is now column number 35. These are the writings. I'm gonna move down some more. And then there's the translation. Marduk again is telling you on who this is. And then now, this is column number 1. And these now are the other cuneiform Akkadian and Sumerian writings. And it's telling you again who this is. And then I'm going to move down some more. And this is the translation of it. And then you move down some more. Guess what? This is column number 2. These are the writings. And it's telling you the same thing over and over and over again. And you move down, and brother, to make a long story short, I have 16 columns. 16 columns. And this is all found in the Journal Museum. And you can, it's all there. I'm just scrolling down, just showing you. Oh, that was the last one. And so there were 16 altogether, and they're giving you the columns, and they're translating it, and they're telling you now what Nebuchadnezzar was doing, and that actual statue now was not the chief one, the Pantheon, the head god, was actually Marduk.
Example.
Yes.
Another thing too that brother need to really look at when you look at Daniel or in the scripture in general. You see chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. But these things are occurring 3, 4, 5, 6 years apart. It's not like it's
Exactly.
happening today and tomorrow and the next day. If you
Exactly.
read Daniel 7, the first verse, it tells you what king, what time. When you read the next chapter over, it tells you in the third year of this king. So it's when you read the Bible, it's so compact. You read verse by chapter, it looks like it's the next day or the next week. You're talking about years apart. These things are happening. You know.
And
Yo,
I'm
so are you telling me that the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3 in Daniel are years apart?
No, I'm saying when you look at Daniel itself, the chapters are not happening the same, like next week or the next day. It's
Yeah, I know
years
that.
apart. Okay.
Let's just deal with like 2 and 3 because we're trying to deal with the image. So like from Daniel's enlargement or becoming great or be it all the way to this statue. Remember, this goes from 2 to 3. You know, so I don't even really see in that position, in that particular instance, years passing. You know, this is like all of this stuff happening, and then there's this image, and not only the image, but then there's a Hanukkah, basically,
Okay.
a Hanukkah.
Okay. But look at this. Look at this. From Daniel chapter 1 to Daniel chapter 8.
Yeah, Daniel chapter 1, he's a kid. We're talking about 2 and 3.
No, I'm saying from Daniel chapter 1 to Daniel chapter 8, you're looking at almost 70 years apart. Okay? You're about 70 years apart. From Nebuchadnezzar to Darius, it's almost 70 years apart. And that's chapter 1 to chapter 8. There's 8 chapters. And that's 70 years apart. So I'm saying to you that these things are not happening the same day or the next day. They are separate. It's reading like that, but they are not back to back. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I
We have 12 minutes.
understand that.
We have 12 minutes, okay, and then we would have to shut it down. But brother Stephen, I just wanted to share with you is that what Eleazar is saying, I'm sure you already know, is that there is a chronological order on the way that you read the book of Daniel. Meaning now that chapters 1 through 4 are read, then you read chapter 7, 8, then chapter 5, then chapter 9, then chapter 6, then chapters 10 through 12. That is a chronological order that you must read it according to dates. The dates are going to be very important. And what's helping a little bit when you read Daniel, when you look at some of these scrolls, some of the information that I brought out, if by chance you were interested, and the only thing that I'm trying to share is that I understand all of the hypotheticals. Well, what if this? What if that? What if this? What is that? What if we're not the children of Israel? I mean, how far you want to go with, what ifs? At some point, I know personally in my life, I have to make a stance with something. Then based upon what I'm calling now the preponderance of the evidence, what I chose to do is go with the preponderance of the evidence. And I can now safely say, based upon scholarship material, academia reports, is that all of these guys are saying the same thing. Because I don't want to come here and start saying things. I can see now a brother or sister saying, listen, you know what? Qassad did a presentation, and you know what? He brought out no facts with anything. He brought out no historical records. He brought out no clay tablets, no stones, no different writings. He brought out nothing. He just started saying stuff. But I think everybody here can, if they're honest, can say, well, listen, Qassad at least brought out information, the reason why he's saying what he's saying. I mean, we have to be fair. I did do that.
Bro, that's fine. I mean, you know, it like I said, man, I'm skeptical about all of this stuff, and I'm just going to roll with, you know, with the scripture. We don't have the image, and plus, some of us aren't even dealing with the Hebrew, so there's actually more of this story contained in the actual Brit than we even have, you know. So I think it's good though, because even, you know, the last few days, this situation has been consuming me. I have been like going into the Daniel a lot. You know, it is one of those books that can be left up to interpretation. And I'm not going to profess that I have it, and you know, probably none of us should. But you know, just keep striving. And but again, I'm not knocking your information that you know you did go and do your homework, but I think you did homework. I think you let other people do the homework. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not a situation where it's just like when you do a book report, you go and get bibliography and footnote, because that's really what the curriculum, the standard for that the curriculum wants you to have. They want, you know, they want you to have bibliography and footnote. But you know, you might have a family history or something. You know what I mean? And an ability that's already footnoted just in your life, in your being. And so sometimes when we get caught up into the way academia wants us to think, because you know, when I first got a degree, I thought that was going to be everything, but I realized it's just their degree is really just set up for you to be proletariat. They're trying to make sure that you can take some definitions and regurgitate it back, and you know, and that's academia. And most of the stuff we deal with, we never use in real life. It usually never has real life application. And we also see that history is being manipulated by the victors. So this, you know, we come 200 years later down the line, and there's going to be a whole nother story going on. You know, I already see where they're taking slavery out of the school books and they're putting forced immigration. But we know from their own scholars that there were very wicked acts and deeds done, that, you know, and things that they bought the town out for, the burnings and the maimings and the lynchings, and they got pictures and they got stories of this stuff. But you know, the new age of thinking is trying to actually change the direction and make it look like that, you know, this stuff didn't happen. These are forced immigrants, but immigrants always have suitcases. They don't have chains on. They have a change of clothes. You know what I mean? Immigration is not usually forced. It's something that's you know, that's done by natural choice. So I'm just of the breed now where I don't believe none of their stuff, and it's fine if you go and get, you know, the scholarship of these gentlemen. But I think too many people in America are. When you talk to people, that's why you see in colleges, there's schools, there's all these schools in the college. Like, you can get a doctorate in anything. You can be a doctor of theology. You can be a doctor of music. But a doctor is actually somebody that heals. But, you know, when you got all these different schools of thought, that's why there's always room for debates, because scholarship is different depending on the audience you have. So I'm gonna leave it with that.
Right. And you know what would be the challenge now? And again, a friendly conversation would be now, if you were up to it, to debunk those writings. Everything that was translated from those tablets that I just showed, it would then be up to the person that says, listen, I don't believe it. Okay, then fine. I'm going to give that individual the respect and the courtesy not to believe it. But out of all fairness, give me the understanding when you go and do your research to debunk those Sumerian, Akkadian, and Ugaritic writings. What I also found interesting, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Samuel Kramer, and you have also Zachariah Sitchin, just to name a few. When they began to now decipher some of these Sumerian gods, what was going on in Mesopotamia, they're telling you, and these are white folks. Zachariah Sitchin is a Jewish guy. Samuel Kramer is a Jewish guy. They're telling you that Abraham and the Mesopotamia, those that lived in the Mesopotamia area up there in Uruk, that these people were Black people. They're telling you this straight up, right off the bat. They were Black. They tell you that Abraham was Black. And so when I continue on reading their information, at least now, these people are not being disingenuous, where they're now actually reading what it is actually saying and then ending. I am open, Aki, because you have been so respectful. Whenever you get your chance, there's no rush. Next week, next month, next year, it doesn't matter. If you could come up with some information and I can give you,
brother, that to me that would be useless. That would be just like if somebody came to me and said, I'm a direct descendant of Moses, but we don't have any DNA from Moses to prove that. You know what I mean? That's how that is. That's exactly how that looks to me. We are so far removed from the situation. You've talked about kingdoms and regimes being replaced since this image. You know what I mean? I asked you, where's the image at?
right.
Nobody knows.
One quick question, because we're running out of time. We're running out of time. Let me just say this, and you have 30 seconds. Is that, remember when these countries, these governments, these kingdoms were conquered? Like, take for example, Babylon fell to the Medo-Persians, and Medo-Persians, as it tells you now, it took over Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. It also goes into now when it talks about the Greeks. The Greeks now, and one in particular now was Antiochus Epiphanes. It may mention now that Antiochus Epiphanes now robbed the center cities in Israel, taking the lamp. They didn't say the lampstand, but he took a lot of monies, a lot of the fixtures in the temple to fund his war against Egypt. Only thing that I'm sharing with you is that gold was such a commodity, and in order for these kingdoms now to stay in power, they did now take gold, melt it down, do whatever it is that they needed to do, and they built a confederate with other countries now to help them to defend themselves off, from other warring countries. And I know that you know that.
Oh, absolutely.
You have 30 seconds, Aki, and then I'm gonna have to close the show.
Okay, it's cool. I'm just saying we know places have been plundered. The temple been plundered. And that was what the Maccabees was about. But listen, we still can't just like look at stuff and say that it's that it's face value when we're so far removed. We have to look at that there's so much tampering that's going on, and let's just deal with that. It's before we just roll with what these dudes are saying.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, so listen, it was a pleasure, everybody.
One little message here, one little message, please. One little message here,
the ministry
please.
tonight. Once again, if anybody is interested in looking at the PowerPoint that I have, I would gladly share it with you. And with that, I'm going to say Laya Tov, and I pray that everybody have a great night.
Dennis, you for call me, Dennis.
I didn't hear you.
I want Dennis to call me.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Dennis,
I hear you. I hear you.
I wait to
Eleazar,
call.
give Lemuel.
All right.
Okay, Lala Tov, thanks for everything.
Okay, La'yatov.